Audience, on behalf of India International Center, it's my privilege and honor to welcome you all to this evening's discussion on the Conscience Network, a chronicle of resistance to a dictatorship, authored by the accomplished journalist and public intellectual Sri Sugata Srinivasaraju. The book we gather to reflect upon this evening is not only a significant intervention in the historiography of the emergency in India, but also a timely reminder of the transnational solidarities that upheld democratic values in one of India's darkest hours. Set largely in the United States, the Conscience Network excavates a parallel history of resistance, weaving together voices of Indian activists, American pacifists, academics, civil rights defenders, and members of the Indian diaspora. Through meticulous archival research and deeply personal narratives, Srinivasaraju reveals how a network grounded in Gandhian ideals transcended borders to resist authoritarianism, affirming that the defense of democracy is a global moral imperative. We are deeply privileged to have with us this evening a panel of thinkers, practitioners, and chroniclers whose lives and work resonate with the very spirit of conscience and resistance that the book celebrates. We begin with Sri Suhas Borker, this evening's moderator, a veteran media person, documentary filmmaker and founder of Citizens First TV, a passionate advocate of public service broadcasting and environmental responsibility. His civil society initiatives have for decades advanced alternative paradigms of development and democratic communication. Welcome, Mr. Borker. We are honored to hear from Dr. Ashis Nandy, one of India's foremost political psychologists and social theorists. His work across disciplines ranging from the psychology of violence to cultures of knowledge and dissent has shaped post-colonial and political thought globally. Recipient of the Fuqua Asian Culture Prize and Hans Cleum Award, Dr. Nandy continues to provoke and inspire with his ethical inquiry into the fate of democracy in the tropics. Welcome, Professor Nandy. Joining him is Neerja Chowdhury, award-winning political journalist and former political editor of the Indian Express, brings to this conversation the seasoned perspective of one who has chronicled the terms of 8 prime ministers and 10 Lok Sabha elections, who had lifelong commitment to human rights journalism, and sharp political insights continue to enrich public discourse. Welcome, Neerja. I don't see Dunu here.
You can introduce me.
Okay. We are equally privileged to welcome Sri Dunu Roy, an engineer turned visionary social activist and political ecologist. From his early student days at IIT Bombay to decades of grassroots work, his alternative development praxis and his role in shaping FREA's vision remain integral to the understanding civil society resistance during and after the emergency. We welcome him in absentia. Following the panel, we are fortunate to witness a special conversation between 3 key protagonists of the book, Dr. Ravi Chopra, Sri S.R. Hiremath, and Professor Anand Kumar, alongside the author. Dr. Chopra, a metallurgical engineer and founder of the People's Science Institute, has long championed the use of science in service of the poor and the planet. His pioneering work on water conservation and environmental governance has earned him wide respect, including his leadership of the Supreme Court's panel on the Char Dham project. Welcome, Dr. Chopra. Sri S.R. Hiremath, a tireless anti-corruption and environmental activist, is renowned for his uncompromising fight against the illegal mining mafia in Karnataka, with roots in the Indian diaspora's democratic mobilization in the United States during the emergency. He exemplifies the enduring link between conscience and action. Welcome, Sri Hiremath. Also in conversation later towards the end of this panel discussion will be Professor Anand Kumar, sociologist and founder member of the Aam Aadmi Party. He brings decades of academic insight and grassroots activism A Fulbright and Humboldt scholar, his intellectual journey bridges global academia and India's struggles for participatory democracy. Welcome, Professor Anand Kumar. And finally, at the heart of it all stands Sri Sugata Srinivasaraju, whose book is a testament to the power of rigorous scholarship, narrative sensitivity, and moral clarity. A Chevening scholar, Espin Fellow, and widely published author, his ability to excavate forgotten histories and give them compelling contemporary resonance makes the Conscience Network an indispensable contribution to our political memory. This evening promises not only to revisit a critical moment in our democratic past, but to remind us of the responsibility of the conscience in times of crisis, then and now. Thank you very much for being here. But before I invite Mr. Borker, I will request Professor Nandy to hold the book and release it formally.
You have to get up.
Madam, Neerja, you also hold the book. You have a book there, you hold the book, yes.
I think we can.
Thank you very much. Over to Mr. Borker for further taking the session forward.
Good evening to all of you. There have been, these past 50 years, there have been many books and many articles and seminars and meetings on the emergency. So I will, there's a image which, Dunu, come. So there is an image, can you put on those, that image please? Now this is in 1997, we had, so this Black Day is not new to all of us. Can you put that image on? So this is Roop Narayan is there, then that's me, then Dilip Swami, Ramesh Sharma, and Kuldeep Nair. Put the other image also, the next one. This is 1997 at the Gandhi Peace Foundation. So that's 28 years ago, Black Day. What's happening? Anyway, okay. So you see, when we talk of the emergency, we must also introspect and talk about the undeclared emergency. That's, I think, very important, and I don't need to describe the undeclared emergency which we are at the moment going through. So, that's the flip side of it. The Black Day of 25th of June 1975 and the continuing I just want to read out an excerpt which
the other picture has come.
Okay, yeah, fine. No, they're the same. No, the people are the same.
Right.
Yeah. It's just a black and white image. So I just want to read out a very brief passage from JP's open letter to Indira Gandhi, which brings in the whole thing in context. I am appalled at press reports. He says, "Dear Prime Minister, I am appalled at press reports of your speeches and interviews. The very fact that you have to say something every day to justify your actions implies a guilty conscience. Having muzzled the press and every kind of public dissent, you continue with your distortions and untruth without fear of criticism or contradiction. If you think that in this way you will be able to justify yourself in the public eye and damn the opposition to political perdition, you are sadly mistaken. If you doubt this, you may test it by revoking the emergency, restoring to the people their fundamental rights, restoring the freedom of the press, releasing all those whom you have imprisoned or detained for no other crime than performing their patriotic duty. 9 years, madam, is not a short period of time for the people who are gifted with a sixth sense to have found you out." Now, there's a little amendment which I would like to suggest. So, and that is to do with the kind of undeclared emergency. 11 years, sir, is not short period for the people who are gifted with a sixth sense to have found you out. The other thing, just very short before we come to Sugata's book, you know, during the UPA, emergency made it to the school syllabus during the UPA rule. That was 3 decades after the imposition of the emergency. And there was elaborate discussion. The emergency and the anti-Sikh riots were included in the textbooks, despite the Congress government being in power. As academia, I'm quoting Anita Rampal, as academia was fully autonomous then. Now, later on, what school textbooks did, the deletions of anything to do with the emergency. Now, that was very odd, but I think that's how it is. It reflects on the vital points which this dispensation wants to place on the state-citizen relationship, the government's vision of democracy, and how it imagines an ideal Indian society. In the summer of 2012, I happened to be at Oxford, and I had a meeting with the then Vice Chancellor, Andrew Hamilton. And he told me that he had just returned from Beijing. The Chinese were interested in cooperation in the fields of technology, sciences, engineering, and medicine, but they wanted to have nothing to do with social sciences. It was very dangerous for a closed system. So you can link that with what is happening now. Now, coming to Sugata's book, I think it's a wonderful parallel on how Gandhian movement was launched in the United States of America to bring about pressure on the dispensation then and how things moved. So without further ado, I would request Sugata to give a brief on the book, please. Sugata.
Thank you, Mr. Borker. Thank you, Ashis, Nandy, for having formally launched the book. I'm obviously very, very happy today. We have a great panel here, and I grew up reading most of them. I've always told Neerja ji that I grew up reading you. And of course, Ashis Nandy has been someone whom I've admired and idolized. And Mr. Dunu Roy, of course. So it's personally a very great moment for me to see all of them here to sort of do the honors to my book and to find them all in the same room. There's of course Ravi Chopra, S.R. Hiremath, Mr. Anand Kumar, all of them who are very, very extraordinary individuals, I should say. And if you read my book, you'll realize why I'm using that adjective. Actually, I don't want to speak about the book. They'll all speak about the book. I'll do something interesting with the book. But before that, I think this is also a great opportunity for me to thank my publisher, Millie Ashwarya. She's here. Without her, this book wouldn't have been produced so well. So I thank her, and she's a huge risk taker. She's published 3 books of mine and still continues to publish me. So I thank her, and I thank the India International Center for graciously hosting this event, and Mr. Borker for his persistence, insistence, and commitment to doing this event. So, and he has stood by me even when we were not in such good terms last time with the Rahul Gandhi book. So I thank him about that. Since this book is about the emergency, I will not make a very predictable, gloomy speech on the dark days of the dictatorship. It would also be very boring to describe the book and the process of writing it, because it's all very evident. You all have copies of the book, and you'll soon be reading it, and you'll realize whether I was bluffing my way through. So I will not venture into doing that. But what I'll do is I'll read 4 short excerpts from the book, which is about 4 different romances that take place during the revolution, so-called quote-unquote, resistance that they are building. So this, because romance and revolution and love, they all, go together, and there's no resistance without romance, and no romance and without revolution. So I'll read 4 little excerpts from the book. One is the romance that bloomed between S.R. Hiremath, who's here today, and Mavis Sigwalt, his wife, Laila Kabir and George Fernandez. Also their commitment, love and commitment and romance that happened. And then Paula Bronstein and Anadi Nayak, 2 very interesting characters who come in the book. And finally, Mr. Ravi Chopra and Joe McGowan. What happened when they were building the resistance in America, and how they met and they fell in love and finally married and are here today. So I'll start with this little passage of Mr. Hiremath waiting for Mavis to come from Dharwad, from US to Dharwad, and he's waiting at the airport, and she has not turned up. So that is the opening sequence of the book. So the book is written in a very different way. It's not just archival, dumping of archival material. It's connected to, basically it's human agency which does a lot of things. So it can't be just staccato, boring, academic kind of a thing. I'm a journalist, so I always want to say a good story. So this is also about storytelling. So I'll just read this little thing from the book. Mavis Sigwalt had not arrived. Her fiancé, Sangaya Rachaya Hiremath, was getting restless at the Belgaum airport. Mavis was scheduled to arrive by the morning flight from Bombay, now Mumbai, where she was expected to have landed from the US via London. She had not taken the flight that arrived in Belgaum at 4 earlier that evening. There was no communication from her. To think of it, there was no practical way of communicating too, unless the lovers had established a telepathic communion. Those cosmic signals that love is said to conjure among those who waltzed on clouds was perhaps absent between the two. They seemed to be a firmly grounded type in tighter embrace of an ideal that reason produced. Whatever they may or may not have been, there is no better way to begin the story of resistance to a dictatorship than invoking love and romance, because resistance has far been recognized as another form of it, romance with ideas, idealism, and history. This was in December 1972 in the presence of the Mysore state, which was getting ready to assume its new name as Karnataka. Mavis and Hiremath were to get married in Hubli city within 10 days of her arrival. However, before the wedding, Mavis was to convert to the Lingayat faith from her Protestant Christian religion at a seminary in Jamkandi town in Karnataka. Like the Mysore state, she was also ready to take on a new name, Shyamala, a name that interestingly denoted a dusky complexion for a white American woman from Iowa. If one simply went by the name, there could not have been a more absolute conversion. As it invariably happens with those visiting home from overseas, Hiremath had lined up a lot in his diary to tight deadlines. The schedule was packed, but the bride who was to have propelled that schedule into action had not arrived. Hiremath, who had been abbreviated to SR since he had arrived in the US in the September of 1968, had many questions circling his mind when Mavis did not arrive. It was a loop created by uncertainty. As the gentle breeze provoked a lazy spiral of dust over the empty tarmac of the Belgaum airport, the questions in his mind retained the complexity of his longish original Indian name, Sangaya Rachaya Hiremath, instead of the new ease of his utilitarian initials, SR. Had Mavis developed cold feet? Had she abandoned her travel altogether? Was she overwhelmed by the enormity of the cultural adjustment and religious conversion that was about to follow? Did she refuse to depart in her mind? Was she being a typical runaway bride? Should the idea of marrying an American girl be abandoned? Did a local girl who spoke what he spoke and ate what he ate work better for him? Mavis was a committed woman. After giving anxious moments to SR, she arrived the next day in the evening. There was nearly a 40-hour delay. SR had not abandoned the wait at the airport. As she walked out of the airplane wearing bell-bottom trousers, SR thought she looked calm and carefree like a British empress. Mavis, who came from America, wouldn't perhaps understand the idiom and allusions that the Indian colonial experience created in the minds of its former subjects. She plainly explained that Emperor Shah Jahan, the Air India flight that was to fly her to Bombay, had a breakdown in London, and that had caused the delay. So this is Hiremath, who was a top-notch corporate in America at that time. He gives up everything and comes back to India after the emergency. So the next little passage is about Laila Kabir, who just passed away, and she has gone to America. She's trying to defend her husband, try to raise resources to fight his case in India. He's still not arrested, and she's very, very anxious that he may be finished off in the prison. So the lonely Laila Kabir Fernandez. Laila Kabir Fernandez, the wife of the firebrand trade unionist and top socialist leader, George Fernandez, was at a loss after her husband had vanished from Gopalpur on sea in Orissa, immediately after the emergency was declared. The couple were holidaying with Sushanto, their toddler son, at Laila's family home when George had to leave to avoid arrest. He had not always been present and available in the marriage, and the emergency had forced a new, yet familiar loneliness on Laila. George went underground and remained undiscovered for nearly a year. When he was betrayed and finally caught and was in a solitary cell at the Hisar prison, he reflected that the longest period he had spent with his wife uninterruptedly was during the 4 months in 1972 when they toured the US and Canada meeting friends and extended family. When Laila returned to ominous Delhi after George had escaped, she realized that the only option left for her was to leave India. She feared that if she stayed back, they would imprison her, and that would leave their son alone. Her husband was a high-value target. He was to become the most hunted man in India's democratic history, and hence her fears and premonitions at the very start were not out of place. She did not want herself and her son to be made emotional pawns in a ruthless regime. Laila left India unnoticed and managed to reach her brother in Charlottesville, Virginia. She instantly became part of IFD and the democracy work they engaged in. She made contact with US trade unions. The American Federation of Labor and Congress of Industrial Organizations had already expressed solidarity with IFD, and that made her job easy. A few months after she reached the US, Laila's passport was impounded. So was Mr. S.R. Hiremath's passport. According to Fernandez's biographer, Laila was not happy about George going underground, seemingly unconcerned about her and their toddler. George and Laila had married 4 years ago in 1971, and Indira Gandhi had attended their wedding reception at India International Center in New Delhi. A Quaker couple, Quakers play a great role in this book, in helping the resistance to come in place. A Quaker couple had pronounced them husband and wife in Hindi. It had never been an easy marriage between the two. In fact, it was in the US that Subramaniam Swamy, had spoken to Laila about George's infidelity. So this is George and Laila. See, I'm reading out these excerpts basically to give you an idea that this book is not just black and white about, declared emergencies and undeclared emergencies and the propaganda that happens on both the sides. This is a work of a writer who has spent 3 years reading a lot of thousands of pages in the archives, and I don't want my work to be reduced to simple statements. And therefore, I'm giving you a complex kind of narration that gets built up in the book. So the next is about a lady called Paula Bronstein, and I have to remember her. She lives in Swarthmore in Pennsylvania. And Mr. Ravi or Hiremath or Mr. Anand Kumar, they didn't preserve a lot of what they had produced at that point of time. But Paula Bronstein, this lady who had married a man in Orissa called Anadi Nayak, and who had been imprisoned here as a CIA agent, and who had escaped to America later, is a very important character in the book. And she was very reluctant to speak to me initially, but then I persuaded her over 2 months, and she agreed. And once she agreed and I flew to the US, she looked after me like a mother and just gave me her whole story. And not just that, she had just dumped all the documents that she had collected at that time somewhere in the attic. She pulled it out, and everything was intact. And a lot of the book gets constructed because of the material that she had preserved. So this is Paula Bronstein, who had a great connection. She was herself a Quaker, and she had a great connection to India because of the Vinoba Bhave's movement. And she was connected to the former Chief Minister of Orissa, Nabakrishna Chowdhury. She was in his ashram, in the Gandhian ashram, when she married. So this is about their romance. And finally, I'll end with Mr. Ravi Chopra's romance. What happens when he meets his future wife? Continents of memory. What we read above was a reconstruction of the written notes that Paula had preserved carefully over decades. The questions that naturally arose from this reading and piecing them together, she clarified during a conversation in her Swarthmore home in May 2022. Like the notes and papers, her memory from nearly 50 years ago was in near pristine condition. Her voice, with its clear ring and a natural high pitch, pulled the narrative out into the sunlight of the present with the superior skills of a raconteur. The fact that it was a bright afternoon in Swarthmore helped. When her memory encountered insignificant forgetting and required only small prompts, Paula herself offered those from another corner of her mind. It was as if 2 different continents of memory were in conversation in her head. The Swarthmore home was where she had moved into a few years after she had returned from India. She had aged and her sparkling silver hair somewhat defined her. She wore a black turtleneck full-arm sweater and over it a pale yellowish maxi dress with embroidered flower designs. The maxi could be mistaken for a nightie, the same apparel that was meant to be a nightgown but had become a humble day-long house dress, transcending class barriers for a new generation of Indian women. The nightie had, after all, liberated millions of them from their heavily pleated saris. By allowing them to breathe freely and survive the tropical heat amidst demanding household chores, it had done more for them than any feminist revolution. The trend had picked up after the emergency. There is a relationship to the maxi trend in India and the emergency because it happens around 75, 77. So the trend had picked up after the emergency had been lifted, although there was no apparent political connection. Paula looked Indian that day. Her cotton apparel was, after all, sourced from a women's cooperative in Maharashtra. She had never come back to India in 50 years, but she still got her dress from a cooperative in Maharashtra. She had quietly maintained her Indian connection. Paula had met Anandi when she was a student at Temple University in Philadelphia, studying for a bachelor's degree in social work. Anandi was doing his master's at the nearby Upland School of Social Change. He did not have a bachelor's degree, but his experience had been considered and he secured a direct admission to a master's program. The Upland School was an unconventional place where most professors were peace activists. It was under a Baptist school for Protestant ministers, Crozer Theological Seminary. Many years later, the Upland School was renamed as King's College for Social Change. It was the Crozer Seminary that Martin Luther King Jr. had secured, where Martin Luther King had secured his master's degree. Anandi was very proud that as a student, he had accompanied the same dorm room that King Jr. did. He occupied the same dorm room that King Jr. did. He had also accompanied him on one of the civil rights marches he had led. So, there is another very interesting Quaker connection in the book, which is of Bayard Rustin. I don't know how many of you have heard of Bayard Rustin. He was quite celebrated by Barack Obama. He was given the National Medal of Freedom much later after he had passed away. And he was the one who had taught Martin Luther King who Gandhi was. He was Martin Luther King's guru on Gandhi during the Montgomery bus protests. So he comes to support the IFT and writes letters to Indira Gandhi, and he was agitated that Nehru and Gandhi's protege had done this, and he had been invited by Nehru for the very first AICC session after the freedom, after India had got freedom. So he had an India connection, and he was a gay, and that is the reason why he had not come to prominence, although he was the one who was responsible for the March on Washington, if you remember the Great March on Washington. And now there's a Netflix movie too, so you can go back and watch this Bayard Rustin movie. So it's a fascinating kind of weave in the book. All these characters.
What is the title of the film?
I think it's called Rustin. It's called Rustin. And it's a fantastic movie. So Bayard Rustin comes in, then Horace Alexander. See, people who resist and protest the emergency are all people who have been greatly connected with the Nehru-Gandhi family. Horace Alexander had taught Indira Gandhi to watch birds in India. And he was Motilal Nehru's friend who had come to India in 1927. He was Gandhi's proofreader, Gandhi's, Nehru's publisher in a way, because he was reading the proofs when Nehru was writing his discovery of India and negotiating his royalty and all that. So they were all intensely connected with the family, and they were all protesting, and they all joined the IFT. So now you get a picture as to how interesting the whole thing was. And it was not just, a bunch of 3-4 people just got together and shouted slogans. So they built a network which was formidable, and the American media took such notice of it that it really shook the regime back home. Although I would not say that that was the reason why the emergency was lifted, because we don't have evidence, and I have to speak as a historian. So there was no evidence to say that was the reason why it was lifted. But then there was considerable pressure, And when YB Chavan comes to Washington, and he meets President Ford, and he says, "You're allowing all these bunch of youngsters to protest on your streets, President. You should stop them." So Ford, in his papers, I've accessed it for the first time, Gerald Ford says, "We judge democracy by our standards. Go back and tell Indira Gandhi." So that's the kind of material which had not come out, which is part of this book. So I'll not take much time there. I mean, I want to listen to Neerja ji as well, and Ashis, Nandy, and Dunu Roy. Mr. Dunu Roy is also part of the book because, Mr. Ravi Chopra very, nicely passes on Freya to him and escapes to America. So, he has kept the thing going for them for a long time. So I end with Ravi Chopra's romance, how he meets his future wife. And they've organized a human rights walk from the Independence Hall, Philadelphia, to New York. And 5 or 6, including Paula and Ravi and Anand, are all walking from that place to New York. And it's a 2-week, 3-week thing. So that is where this sequence comes. Amidst all the serious talk and the tiring work of fighting oppressive regimes, discussing constitutions and saving democracy, something more cheerful happened at the walk. Ravi found love. The steps of destiny had quite literally made him embrace his future life partner during the walk. This was in Trenton, somewhere near Ryder College. As we learnt earlier, the WRL is the War Resisters League. They're all part of this network that IFD has built. WRL's feeder walk for disarmament was on from Boston to Washington, and their walkers had reached Princeton a little before IFD walkers touched Trenton. At Ryder College in Trenton, IFD had a few programs scheduled, and a Quaker professor at the college was to be their host that evening. At 4 p.m. sharp, that day in September 1976, when Ryder College was a short distance away, Raminder Singh, a mechanical engineer in his early 40s, demanded his evening cup of tea. This 4 p.m. demand had to do with a deal between him and Ravi that, come what may, Ravi would ensure that Raminder got his tea at 4 p.m. every day during the walk. It was not such a difficult demand to meet, and Ravi had given his word. On that day too, when they were nearing Ryder College and the clock struck 4, Raminder asked Ravi to get him his promised cup of tea. Ravi showed him the white college building in plain eyesight and said that he would make arrangements as soon as they got there in an hour or so. Raminder pulled out the terms of the deal and was stubborn. He wanted his tea right then at 4 p.m. as agreed. When Raminder was confused about his tea, was fussing about his tea, and all of them, that is Paula, PK is PK Mehta, the great PK Mehta, was a civil engineering professor who built Freya and was at Berkeley. So he was also walking. And you should read his very reflective diary on the walk in the book. It's a fabulous diary that he writes during the walk. So that is Paula, PK, and Anand had joined Ravi in renegotiating the terms of the tea deal. So to say, a car came to a screeching halt near them. When they were doing that, a car came to a screeching halt near them. Suddenly, a young woman jumped out of the car, rushed towards Ravi, and flung herself around him. In a split second, a lot of things went past in my mind. I was asking, who is this woman? Why did she rush towards me when Anand was the more handsome guy among us? Mr. Anand is here. What would the elderly PK was their mentor, what would the elderly PK think about me? Would he suspect my character? Ravi recalled the usual male and morality questions that anyone reflective would have as an inbuilt reflex. The young woman introduced herself as Jo McGovern. She said that she and her friends in the car were with the WRL, that is the War Resisters League, and were part of the advance team going around Trenton doing publicity for their meeting. They were told to expect the IFD group in Trenton and extended greetings. Amidst the warmest of greetings that the team had received, particularly Ravi, the fuss about Raminder's tea was forgotten. It was a dramatic moment that had caused a slow infusion of magic between Ravi and Joe, a magic that has lasted a lifetime. Raminder really was the Cupid that no one spotted. He had caused love with a cup of tea. Joe walked with Ravi and other IFT members the next day for an hour and went back to her walk after that. Ravi had not forgotten to collect her contact details. So I'll stop here. So I've gone out of the way to read the less serious parts of the book. I could have told you about how T.N. Cole wrote a stupid article asking if Mrs. Indira Gandhi is really a dictator. He goes to 30 universities around America trying to do propaganda, and then finally says, I got the emergency lifted, I advised her. This is retrospective wisdom in his memoirs. So there's an entire chapter on him called A Diplomat on a Mission, and that's interesting too because he was a very interesting character, well-meaning and all that, but came from the same Kashmiri cabal that was around Mrs. Gandhi, and it is a very interesting chapter. So I urge you to read the book, not just keeping these binaries in mind, of emergencies and all that. It's all there in the book. I don't say that's not there. I'll answer all the tough questions later. So with this romance, I leave you to Neerja.
I didn't want to talk anything about the book because, you see, Sugata speaks with such romantic passion about these love affairs that I didn't want to disturb that. You see, this I asked Sugata that there is this fantastic love affair between Paula and Anadi, Paula Bronsky and Anadi Naik, and somehow Anadi goes, just disappears among the pages. So I asked him, where is Anadi missing in your book? In the latter part of the book. So he said that no, he didn't want to kind of talk to me. He had started a new life. He had remarried. In fact, Paula had also remarried. So he didn't want to talk about that thing. But that portion which Sugata has written about his escape from parole in Orissa, he goes to Nepal, and then a flight is arranged via Thailand to the US. That's something very interesting. One later on, many years later, one of our raw officials were also disappeared like that, via Nepal. But that's another story. But this was something remarkable. And then when we were discussing about this program, I talked to Ashis, and he told me that P.N. Dhar one day called Rajni Kothari that you better get away, otherwise they're going to arrest you. So Rajni Kothari lands up in the US and is saved from jail. Now I'd request Neerja to come and tell us. She's written a very interesting piece today on the three veins which ran parallel in Mrs. Gandhi: Durga, Dictator, and Democrat. Yeah. So, and then there's Sugata has mentioned the Hiremath brigade also, Rajmohan Gandhi and that whole Hiremath family very cogently in the book. And then I would request Neerja also to compare those days with present, little bit if she can. Thank you.
Yeah, shall I do it here? Is it on? Well, thank you, Suhas. First of all, my many congratulations to Sugata. He is so prolific. The book on Devagowda, somebody who introduced him was absolutely right. Excavating forgotten history. And then to the book on
Rahul Gandhi, and now this wonderful, well-researched book. But Sugata is more than just research or professionalism. He is thorough, detailed observation, and reflective. In whatever he writes, speaks. So, those of you who have not read the book will enjoy it as he's read parts of it. I also kept, turning the pages because I knew some of the characters well. So I wanted to know more and more and more. But it's a story that needed to be told. And it's not only a story about, the resistance network that so many Indians and others created in the US and in Europe to resist the authoritarian regime of Indira Gandhi. They were truly the conscience keepers of that period. And I would say in what they have continued to do, they are also well and truly our nation builders. So congratulations, Sugata, for bringing this into the public domain in such a detailed way. A word about those about whom the book has been written. Suhas mentioned, Hiremath. In 1976, I was working in Hiremath. I had cut my teeth in journalism by working in Hiremath, a small independent news weekly that came out from Bombay, now Mumbai. Chief editor Rajmohan Gandhi, grandson of Mahatma Gandhi, editor Kalpana Sharma, who's gone on to write on issues of environment, like Ravi has pursued those issues. And in those days in 1976, in the middle of 1976, what was really uppermost was George Fernandez, the most wanted man in India. And Mrs. Gandhi has set up a special cell in Delhi to step up efforts to nab him. And 7 agencies of the state government and the central government were coordinating their effort on how to get him. And on 10th June, they got him in Calcutta, picked him up from a church compound. And the previous year, he'd been on the run. Of course, there were newsletters that would come. And those of us on Hiremath sometimes would go across on a Sunday morning there was a socialist network. There was a gentleman we would go to in Dadar. And they would give us all that could not be printed. And we would put it in order, news, and that would be sent, distributed underground. To various people. So we would wait for these scraps of information that came our way, where George was, the heroics, and how later we found, when he left, when he went underground, and Laila was left there with their 17-month-old son, to which you referred. And 3 days later, he knew she was going to pass through Howrah station. And he sent her a note. He had the wherewithal to do that, even at that time. He sent her a note saying, I don't know where this will end, but meanwhile, our son will keep you company. So, of course, they were to meet 22 months later, very turbulent marriage, all that. But, that was the height of what the scene was like. And the other pieces of information we'd wait for was what was happening in the United States of America. I heard about Ravi, I heard about Anand. Of course, we were to meet much later. Ravi came in 1977 to Mumbai. Anand I met much later, I think 1979. And we'd heard about your Philadelphia walk. We'd heard about Anand's, scholarship being suspended, and how you were mobilizing people, speaking, holding meetings, and New York Times writing about you people, Indian Opinion, and what it would publish. So all this bit of information was filtering in. And then 1979, I went to a meeting in Bhopal, invited by Anand's sister, and I was amazed to see the awe, and there's no other word for it, in which Anand was held at that time by the young people, some from JNU, some from other students' organizations. So these were heroes. And as I said earlier, they remained nation builders to this day. So, the heroes of the second freedom struggle, and others that one didn't know personally but heard about. Now, I want to say just one word, Sugata, on the key to their success at that time. 50s, 60s, 70s was a period where idealism prevailed. So you had a Ravi Chopra and an Anand Kumar put their careers for which they had gone and their families had sent them a dream to pursue in jeopardy. And they didn't think twice about it. I don't know whether you did, but you didn't think twice about it, I think. And that was a period where it wasn't, this was happening in the United States in the 70s, but you saw there were people taking to Naxalism, there was people taking to, socialist groups, there was people going to the RSS, there was the Ramakrishna Mission, there was a desire to go beyond self to bring transformation in society. And that was a very natural thing for many, many, many young people. So that idealism was one of the factors why they succeeded and managed to mobilize public opinion, not only of the Indians who were based there, but of American policy makers, which had a bearing on the situation back home. The other thing that was, I think, key, why, the whole movement, and they were part of that movement against resistance to Indira Gandhi's dictatorship, and that manifested itself back home in India. The political opposition at that time against the dominant Congress had not yet been co-opted in the political structure. There were groups outside. The opposition groups were outside who could raise their voices when things went wrong. Of course, there were unions like the railwaymen's unions, taxi union that George Fernandez headed. This co-option into the political structure took place after 1977, when all these opposition parties entered government. After that, the scene underwent a change. It wasn't quite what it used to be. The third thing that I feel, which has been pointed out by John Hanson, early on in your book, it's very interesting. That key was that they pursued unity in action, not unity in ideology while they were mobilizing opinion out there. Had they made ideology the basis of their mobilization, there would have been 10 groups pursuing different ideological persuasions. And the whole movement might have got fragmented and would not have had the kind of impact it did. I don't know whether they'd agree with this or not, but I found this a very interesting observation in Sugata's book. Now, such an overarching coming together of different forces opposed to an authoritarian force at the time. And this was also happening, remember, not just in the United States of America or in the European capitals. It was happening in the jails of India where the opposition leaders were imprisoned. And this is what was instrumental in bringing together these opposition leaders into one unified entity when Indira Gandhi announced elections on 18th of January 1977. Within 5 days, these people had decided to merge their identities and form one unified Janata Party. So this overarching thing, this happened in 77. It happened over 2.5 years in 87 to 89 again, when the opposition forces came together against Rajiv Gandhi's 414 Lok Sabha seats, and they managed to get, Vishwanath Pratap Singh managed to get centrist forces to form one party, regional parties to form a supporting group outside, and right and left to support this formation. And they threw out Rajiv Gandhi's government with an unprecedented 414 Lok Sabha seats. It came down to 197 seats, and Rajiv Gandhi was replaced by Vishwanath Pratap Singh as the Prime Minister of India in 1989. So while a movements, can go, there can be unity in action instead of unity in just ideology. But when it comes to running a government, it's a different story. Because in 1977, ideology, the dual membership issue, or whether the former Jansangh people who merged their identity into Janata Party will also continue to have membership of the RSS, that issue brought the government down. And so also in 1990, what helped bring the government of Vishwanath Pratap Singh down was Mandal versus Kamandal ideological fault lines. So that is a bigger, more complex thing, but it is interesting that in mounting a movement, unity in action, how important it is as opposed to unity in ideology. The other interesting thing which I wanted today is another thing I will go to what Sugata has mentioned in his book. Today is the Samvidhan Hatya Divas, observed by the BJP. Now, it is very good to keep that memory alive, because I was thinking if 65% of India today is under 35, I would say it's safe to assume that 4 out of 5 Indians were neither born or were too young to have any memory of the emergency. To them, actually, we all talk of emergency, it's a big recall for us. What happened 50 years ago, those of us who lived through it. But for most young Indians, or not so young Indians also, they really don't know what it was. So to have a divas, like you have a girl child divas, you have many other divas, to focus on an issue, it's a good thing to remember what happened during those 21 months so that we never allow it to happen to our democracy. Of course, it is, what have they learned out of it, the political parties, is a different story. Indira Gandhi admitted to excesses, I think early 78. Rahul Gandhi 4 years ago admitted that it was a mistake, but the Congress party has not yet felt it can say it was a blunder. It was a mistake that should not have been done, and we promise it will never be done again. Once the Congress makes that admission, they've done it, but with caveats. Indira Gandhi said, I did it for the nation's security was at peril, but to say it was, Mr. Kharge has given a press conference today, which is also very new. For Congress to face the media, where they know that unpleasant questions will be asked, is a courageous thing to do. But not gone far enough. They say it's a deflectory mechanism for the BJP to go in for this Samvidhan Hatya Divas. Now, I don't know whether I should make this point. I should probably end here. Well, very important thing but I will make it. I don't know what the time is. There is a time constraint. You have mentioned a very interesting change in perception that has taken place about the Constitution of India. It has got equated to and identified with B.R. Ambedkar in recent decades. I don't remember in the 80s, or before that Ambedkar was seen the sole repository or sole creator in the way of the Constitution as he is being seen today. And in some way, you point this out, that Constitution has become a political symbol, not just by the Congress party who gained as a result of it in 2024 election, but also equally by the other side, the BJP. Now, for us as citizens, it's a wonderful thing. Both say, we vow, we promise, we are not going to change the Constitution. Constitution is going to remain the centerpiece of our democracy. Very good. We can hold them up to that. But the Constitution has become equal to B.R. Ambedkar, is equal to Dalit, is equal to reservation as continuation, is equal to a political symbol by both sides. So we are now entering a phase that it is not remembering 50 saal pehle emergency kya hua. In an academic way, lamenting. No, we are into a more live situation politically, as far as the Constitution of India is concerned, and preserving what is the letter and spirit of it. It has become a political issue. So, Sugata, I'll end here, but thank you for this book, and all power to you to write many more. And thank you for bringing us the stories of Ravi Chopra, Dr. Anand Kumar, and so many others who made what they did possible so many years ago.
Yeah. So we'll now ask Dunu Roy to say his piece. But I just want to read out, this is page 20, and Sugata gives a very interesting, you see, Dunu is mentioned 5 times in dispatches in the book. 5 times. So this says, in 1968, when Ravi got into Stevens, this is of course
Stevens
different.
Institute of Technology.
Yeah. He persuaded Dunu Roy at IIT Mumbai and Bombay that time to run FRIA. Now, FRIA is the Front for Rapid Economic Advancement of India. Until he came back, Dunu Roy was in his first year master's program in chemical engineering and already had a job offer from Hindustan Levers. Until Dunu Roy completed his course, it was agreed that another friend at the IIT, D.C. Agarwal, who was to go to North Carolina later for his master's, would run FRIA. With this arrangement, Ravi had successfully and permanently diverted Dunu Roy from his corporate path. Later, Roy was to become a renowned political ecologist, social scientist, and social activist. Go ahead.
I think that is why I've been called. कि तुम लोगों के पोल खोलूं. Thank you, Sugata, for calling me for this. I can think of no reason other than the fact that I know all the protagonists in your book. Anand is there, Ravi, SR, and of course DC is not here today. He's also mentioned in the book. And Sri Kumar. Anadi I had met many years ago in Odisha. So in a sense I know all of them, but I would also acknowledge that they have made tremendous contributions to a liberal view of how society should be, and they're carrying on with it. It's really enormous. Perhaps the title of your book could have been Love and Desertion. Because they all ran off to the US and they found love there. And some of them came back also. But in that process, I think their thinking changed a lot. All of them had gone to the US to make money. And many of them being persuaded by their families. I know Ravi's father used to natter on and on कि क्या कर रहा है, पैसा नहीं बना रहा है, कब बनाएगा पैसा. I think it took you, 11 years to do your PhD. And in all that time, his father was fretting and fuming. Okay, when will this boy come back and make more money? So those are constraints under which I think all three of you worked. And you had to make space for your commitments. I will not take too much of your time. It's painful seeing people just standing here for so long. So I'll make my points very briefly. As to what can we learn, I think it's an extraordinary presentation that you have made of what happened in the 70s and what can we learn, particularly for the present. The reason is that I had visited the US in 77, just after all this had happened. And I traveled through about 12 cities and towns of the US. And I found no vestige of the IFD remaining. I met P.K. Mehta also in California, and he was not very encouraging. So clearly something had happened, which is acknowledged in the book also, to diffuse that spirit, which had accumulated over 2 to 3 years. Now what is it? And I think the roots go back much deeper. I was just remembering, 1934 was when the Congress Socialist Party was founded. And who were the office bearers? Jayaprakash Narayan was the General Secretary. Joint Secretaries were M.R. Masani, N.G. Gore, Mohanlal Gautam, and E.M.S. Namboodiripad. Within 2 years, it split. And everybody went in different directions. As we know, JP went off to the Sarvodaya. Masani went off to become a founder member of the Swatantra Party, which was a pro-capitalist. Gore went into the Praja Socialist Party. Mohanlal went back to the Congress. And Namboodiripad went off into the CPI. So it's curious how people come together and then go apart again. And it's happened many times. And the same thing has happened with the socialists and the communists time and again in this country. And that, I think, is a theme that we need to keep in mind. Why do these splits take place? What happened to the unity that was there in the Indian National Congress, that was preserved by all the leaders, not just Nehru and Gandhi, but everybody contributed in keeping people together for 30 long years. And why does it doesn't happen, as you have mentioned? You know, whether it was the Samyukt Vidhayak Dal, whether it was the Janta Dal, the Janta Party. Why do these splits keep happening again and again and again? The second point I wish to make is the Indians for Democracy in the US. and from your book it becomes very apparent, they used pamphleteering and meetings as a mode of reaching information to first the Indians in America and then later on to Americans, to persuade them that democracy was under threat in India. Now, pamphleteering and propagandizing and giving talks is one method. It's powerful. But the point is, what is its efficacy in the long run? How long does it last? And are there other methods through which cadres can be built over long periods of time? And what are those methods? Neerja mentioned unity in action, and perhaps there's much to be thought of political education in action rather than political education through theory. This is a very critical difference. And since Ravi left for the US saddling me with FRIA, I can say from my experience in FRIA that for 10 years that FRIA existed, we sent out 400 students every year into the rural and urban areas to learn from what the reality was. And that educational exercise left a lasting impression. It lasted far beyond what leaflets and pamphlets could do. Where is this, the nature of this kind of cadre building? I know of only one institution that has done it for almost a century now in this country, and that is the RSS. Nobody else has done it. And that leads me to my second point, which is when these alliances come together, when these coalitions build up on these issues of social remedies, social changes, earlier they did not do it. But after 1967, the right wing has been very successful in penetrating each of these and claiming credit for it later on, which has happened for the emergency also, as it comes across in your book, the tom-tomming and the propaganda that went on later, saying that who had, and even today, the Hatya Divas is a way of commemorating what was the role of a particular organization. And this kind of manipulation we have not learned how to deal with. And the last point is, at least in our recent history, there have been 3 times in which democracy has been used to impose authoritarian regimes. The same democratic structure that we've been trying to save, the same constitution that we have been trying to save. So it raises a very profound question, whether that democracy and that constitution does not need a relook. Should we not be rethinking about some of these issues before speaking of saving them? Unless these issues are addressed, and I think they have been brought up in your book, and I hope your next book will examine it, and your 4th book will come out with such supportive publishers. And I think that is something that you have done, for which I congratulate you.
Now we come to our last speaker of the day. In this part of it, the protagonists have yet to come in. So we have Ashis Nandy. Now there's a brief excerpt which I would like to read out, where Ashis Nandy is mentioned in the book. Rajni Kothari had moved to the United States with his family in mid-1976 when he had learnt that the Indira Gandhi regime was contemplating action against him. He was at Columbia University as a visiting professor, and Ravi had met him for the first time at the Grand Central Station in New York. Now Ravi recalls this. Pratish Nandy was with him that day. I guess Ashish Nandy, who was Rajni's colleague at CSDS, had arranged the meeting between them. After Pratish left, Rajni and I had a long conversation. I spoke to him about IFD and invited him for a meeting the following week. He came and spoke. Now there's a short excerpt which I want to read out. This is Ashish Nandy, A Life in Dissent. Ashish Nandy also gained some public notoriety a decade earlier. This is about 2000, when he launched a sharp attack on the current Prime Minister Narendra Modi for his alleged role in the 2002 lethal communal attacks on Muslims in Gujarat. Nandy contended at that time that Modi's behavior was a classic clinical case of a fascist who acted in a manner exhibiting clear paranoid and obsessive personality traits. Not altogether surprisingly, Modi responded by initiating a lawsuit against Nandy, charging him with fanning the flames of communal disharmony. Over to Ashish.
Well, I shall be very brief. It has been a long meeting. I had the privilege of being in India during the first year of the emergency. And I also went the following year because I was invited to teach at the University of Texas, and I thought it will be a good respite. I went there in United States, so I have some understanding of the kind of work which these people, Ravi is one of the heroes of this book. They all were busy there. Personally, 50 years is a long time. And the emergency took place 50 years ago. I would have preferred that we had invited at least a few novelists to take care of what happened in the emergency. Because it was in some ways also comical also. All comical. I mean, a few instances will make it clear. I knew a person whose mother was desperate to have his other son married into the Nehru family. Now, in emergency time, because that's the time they felt that the family could get a real push into bigger things. Because it was also arbitrary. There were also people who went to United States with great degree of effort, because it was not easy to get a visa, because they were already wanted to check whether you are going there for political purposes or whether you are going for a serious business or intellectual purposes, teaching purposes and that kind of thing. But when I went to United States, I found many of them didn't open their mouth on it. They were deadly scared of people speaking in public. They sometimes came to the meetings, but didn't open their mouth. One very famous man was that of that kind. So throughout the year, I never heard him open his mouth, though he was a well-known politician, and has gone out of India with great effort made by some people. I knew another person who was very well versed on emergency, journalist, well known, and so on and so forth, politically alert. Everybody wanted him to hear him because he was quite a well known scholar also. But his standard answer was this: Do you expect me to abuse my mother in before a crowd? Yeah. He claimed that he was a secret rebel against the emergency, but wouldn't open his mouth anywhere. So there are this kind of characters all over the place. And today, in the afternoon, I was trying to remember some of my friends who would have been very happy to be here now at this meeting. Many of them are dead, and many of them have struggled very hard because suffered quite a lot in the emergency. And how the whole thing was in many ways would be a good subject of a comedy. Sanjay Gandhi, the great new find, was the real power, and then dies of what? Because he had the habit of flying a plane with chappals. So at that time, the person in charge of
Delhi Flying Club. The Delhi Flying Club.
Of the in this whatever you call it.
Delhi Flying Club.
Huh?
The Delhi Flying Club.
Delhi? No, this was some Muslim name who was I think in the Air Force, who went to Mrs. Gandhi twice or thrice to say that your son insists on wearing chappals, not even sandals, chappals, and flies his plane. This is very risky. And Mrs. Gandhi thought he was hostile to her son, and therefore became very cold towards him and didn't respond to him at all. And in due course, fortunately, Mr. Gandhi died. So at least one danger of getting a inheriting the power of Indira Gandhi was eliminated. I have a whole list, there is like this vasectomy became a comic type thing. People have made songs on it in the villages. कुछ इंद्री हटाओ इंद्र बचाओ ऐसा कुछ I forget now. They will sing it together and it became very popular. Tiki Kaul, Nehru's cousin. He was still he was a very interesting character. He suddenly became very important. And his end came differently, not differently, I would say, very comically. He was the ambassador to Moscow. And at that time, Sam Benegal was chosen to send a
Film. A film.
Whole set of artwork. And the first thing he did was, he said, "What is this?" When they were putting it up. So Benegal said, "It is Ardhanarishwar." So he said, "What nonsense! Huh? You are sending this from India. We are all men, not Ardhanarishwar, no, half men. Send it back immediately." This kind of whole thing was run by people who had no business to be in public life, frankly, if you ask me. And Mrs. Gandhi had to depend on them because she didn't trust also many of the people whom she has now, like for example, the way she dealt with some of the army officers. So she was very arrogant in this kind of matters. So this is the way it goes, and I have a feeling that a novelist can do a much better job, and what we can do. So enjoy your memories of emergency, because we are at the moment have a worse kind of emergency, which is very shrewd, very well articulated, and system that has come up, which is even more dangerous, if you ask me, even more dangerous than the emergency. Emergency was too open, too crude, and too easily vulnerable. That is why it collapsed after 2 years. I mean, even in our own office, PNR was his main primary. The Rajni Kothari they had decided to arrest him. But this has to, Mrs. Gandhi had to sign that. So P.N. Dhar said, Rajni, that don't worry, I will tell you when she signs it. So, or going to sign it. So, Mrs. Gandhi couldn't sign it on Saturday, and so it was to come back to him on our table on Monday. And PN dutifully phoned Rajni that you better go out of India with your family today. And, so there was that also, simultaneously. So let us look at the things, and many of the persons were also, I must say that there are many people, I wish some of them are there, few are there, but many others are not there, who struggled very hard and paid. Many of them, by the way, also. I mean, it is, I'm talking of an ideal novel on the subject. Many of them, after the withdrawal of the emergency of Mrs. Gandhi, within few weeks, sometimes not even few weeks, few days, began to sing a different song. Many of them claimed to me that they were actually working for the underground against the emergency. Many. I have the names and all that, so I have not forgotten. Some of them I know for years. Others have even well-known professors who were very close to Mrs. Gandhi because they had a kind of small clique. So they were re-editing this paper, same paper, but with a different suite, and showing it to us that, अरे हाँ वो एक पहला draft था, ये this is the thing, and I was always against emergency, and I have told Mrs. Gandhi that it is not a good thing. So, this is not one case. At least 3 or 4 cases I know of this time. So, you have enough material to now deconstruct the emergency, and that is an easy one. We have got about it. Some were not that lucky. Some were also suffered from it. But I'm afraid that the present emergency may be most difficult to subvert. Thank you.
Next part.
I mean, I would like to just give a small token of, appreciation for all the guests who had come here. Because this is from my archival research. See, I found posters that Ravi and SR and Anand made during the IFT protests. So I've got them, printed, and I would just like to give it to them. It's. There are 2 posters, one of the walk,
Thank you.
and one of the. I was a little scared getting them on the flight because they all looked like little, shotguns. Thank you.
So we'll move to the next part now. Anand, Ravi, and
Poster,
Hiremath have to come up here, and we go down. Huh? Just want to take. We have to move out now. So can you just
all
So please.
So are we going down?
Yeah. Is it dinner?
This will return.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I have to.
Listening to those stories. How long are you down?
I'm here till 27. Yeah, we'll start.
I'll talk to you another time.
So where
I don't know. Thank you.
He's here. Where's the bag? Anand कहाँ है?
Sir,
He's there. Where is that bag in which
yeah. Sir, Anand, can you please come? Start. Yes, sir. Mr. Hiremath. We'll finish till 10:15. They want us to do it in. Yeah. Sir, they're getting a little restless. Yeah, I think it's fine. So you're here. Yeah, I'm giving you one. Got one for you as well.
this is for you.
Oh, good. I thought you were feeling cold and. No, please. No. Thank you. Congratulations. Very moving, very touching. Start. Say here. Yeah. You come here. Say here.
Shall I come here? Oh, sorry.
So I think. Yeah. People leave. So this is yours. So this is for you, the posters you made.
Oh, thank you so much. Most memorable.
Yes. We'll do it at the end of this thing. So I really don't know how to do this session if the protagonists want to ask me questions or want to sort of, they've read the book, so if there are inaccuracies on which they want to sort of hold me responsible, I will sort of promptly accept all the mistakes that I've made and we'll move ahead. So Raviji, you want to start? You want to start?
No, I think the academic is sitting there.
No, I am like all of you, very impressed that something which was part of 50 years ago and has receded in our memories collectively as a nation, particularly the younger generation, has been so vividly and with such fine use of language and craft of writing brought to life again. I'm not sure whether this kind of a book will be appreciated as a consensus construction, consensus narrative. There will be always few people who will be found missing in this story, and there will be many more who will be complaining that you have made an enlargement of my mistakes or my problems. You did not see my side of the story. But the way Sugata ji moved into the field was very interesting because he was not having any judgment. He was not having any preconceived notion of good and bad. And he let the events tell the story. And that's why these personal components of our life came into such a prominent relief. Remembering those days, as Ashis Das told, there were people who had all the right reasons to keep silent, because survival is the biggest imperative. And in those times, it was not known to anybody, including Mrs. Gandhi, how long this will go. Every time anybody will ask, like Vinoba, she'll say it will take a few months. Things are normal. There's hardly any protest, hardly any problem. Soon, soon, soon. And that soon became too remote. She postponed election and she started getting into a trouble zone. So far as American story is concerned, Americans, like most of the nationalities, are very ethnocentric. What happens in their neighborhood is more important. What happens in their country is more important than what is happening at the ideological level or at the philosophical level. So I'd like to ask Sugata ji, when he undertook this innocuous project, what inspired him to hold on to it for 3 years? I know him as an engaged journalist for a long time, but he went to America, to such remote places and to such people who were totally out of the radar. I mean, we were not having contacts with them, like Paula. And Paula was a sad story. But he could persuade her. Similarly, talking to some other people like Shri Kumar Podar, and many of us also, for us, it was a great time. We did our part. It was a very ordinary task which we did, but then the way he presented it was very outstanding. So how you got the idea to evaluate it in terms of a third person about this story of conscious network?
Yeah.
But before that, what kept you going? Because, to pursue a story for 2-3 years
Yeah.
of this kind. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. It's a viva voce question, for a PhD. So it's no, sorry. But see, what basically got me going, I became very inspired by this whole thing when I had accidentally read something in the New York Times. That was a story that was written on him. It was about how his scholarship had been taken away by Mrs. Gandhi's regime and how he had suffered, and that was the story. And I identified a few names there, which included Mr. S.R. Hiremath and Ravi Chopra. I didn't know Mr. Ravi Chopra, and if there was somebody who was very reluctant to speak to me, it was Mr. Ravi Chopra. He never, I wrote to him, I texted him, he never responded. So I had to bring in Mr. Hiremath to persuade him to talk to me, and then Mr. Hiremath, being Hiremath, he just said, let's go to Dehradun and land up at his place. That's the only way he'll speak. So when I landed, of course, he was full of stories and all that. But then what basically triggered the whole interest was that Paul Grimes' one full page in the New York Times describing how this small little organization called the IFT, whose national coordinator was Mr. Hiremath, and these people were part of it, were actually becoming the epicenter of resistance against Mrs. Indira Gandhi's emergency globally. There was something happening in UK as well. But what was happening in the UK was a free JP campaign. It was a very limited thing. Yes, great. Yeah, Sarur Hoda and Mansoor Hoda, and they'd got this Dharampalji and Satish Kumar. So, people like that who had actually put together a fantastic team. And they had this Nobel laureate, a double, Olympian and a Nobel laureate as the Philip Noel Baker as their chairman. So, all this fascinating names which started cropping up. I thought I should explore. It's basically a journalist's instinct. It's not a historian's instinct, but a journalist's instinct to dig and dig and dig. And as I started digging, Neerja ji would understand this, several other threads started getting connected, opening up. And Paula was one such story. She was a fascinating character who had married this Odia man who's accused as a CIA guy, and Mrs. Indira Gandhi every other day is speaking about a foreign hand. And I mean, there were fascinating stories to be told. He losing his scholarship, Mr. Hiremath, a top corporate person in America, driving a very expensive car, suddenly gets interested in this thing. There is J.J. Singh, another person who built the India League of America, revived the India League of America, and this was an untold part of the whole emergency thing, which is he was trying to reconcile JP and Indira Gandhi. So I started looking up his papers in the Nehru Memorial Library, and it was fascinating. This man was close to both and trying to bring about a kind of rapprochement, and he was a fascinating character who had got a 20-page profile written about him in the New Yorker, and he was called the one-man lobby. And this man was entirely responsible when Harry Truman was the president of America. He had lobbied for Asians, naturalization of Asians. Indians became citizens of America, could become citizens because of the Lewis Emanuel Act, which he lobbied for. Those two were senators. And he has a 20-page profile written in the New Yorker of those days, and the headline catches all, one-man lobby. So this man who made money in the US, who did everything, had just come back to India and was staying in the Friends colony in Delhi, and somehow had lost all money, but was still in contact with Mrs. Gandhi, and writing, such sharp letters to her saying that you're doing wrong on this, you're doing right on this. And she was much younger to him, so he would call her Hindu. And so he was another character, I wouldn't go into that a little too much. I don't want to get into it too much with the details, because you'll read it in the book. It's an entire chapter, the life and legacy of J.J. Singh. So these characters, these names, which started, I started discovering as I started researching for the book, which actually kept me going. And of course, the money part of doing all this work, going to America, spending time there, a lot of people helped. And Mr. Hiremath had a network. He had headed the India Development Service in Chicago. So friends of his, hosted me and let me travel, and then my own family was there. So the logistic part of it was one part of the story, but the logistics I was driven to sort of get all that because the stories were so fascinating.
Thank you.
Yeah, that whole emergency was a very unique, in my mind, a great learning process. To tell you the truth, the way he from New York and Anand Kumar and I from Chicago and somebody from California, we all got involved with an intuitive feeling that if we want to go back to India and do rural development work or environmental work, a democratic framework is very essential, because it is that framework that would make our work meaningful. And previous 5 years that I was involved in contacting Indians across the United States, having seminars on how to go back to India, how to start small industries in India, returning to India, or get faculty positions in leading institutions like IIM, IIT, and so on. So that had built a very good network, and it came in extremely handy. As Ashis Nandiji would say, many Indians were not even willing to talk about it at that time. But the way slowly that organizations grew and how things could come together, and first learning process was that a team of people who are motivated by nothing, by ideals larger than themselves, could come together and have a kind of impact was a great learning process. But having said all that, even 50 years after the emergency, I would still not understand how a senior journalist and a very great writer like you would consider this as worthwhile a book. Has always been a very mystery to me.
No, it's actually, the answer was in your own statement that you just made. I was, theoretically speaking, there was an American dream. I think Mr. Dunu mentioned it while he was speaking. There was an American dream, and that I was interested in trying to study the American dream. And I was talking to a top psychiatrist in Nimhans, Mr. Sanjeev Jain. Sanjeev Jain was a top guy, and I was thinking of writing something on the American dream and the Indian dream. That was something loosely trying to construct something. And I found that these people's dream had undergone a transformation, and they were coming back to India after the emergency with an Indian dream. And because Sanjeev Jain had always told me that the Indian dream had become a fragment of the American dream. So making money, or looking at commercial success, financial. And there was all this whole thing happening at that time called the brain drain. In fact, Bhagavati even proposes a brain drain tax at that point of time. So all these, I was looking at these things, and then when I looked how the trajectories of these people had changed, and how their American dream, how Ravi goes to America, with what dream he went there, how Mr. Hiremath, who's a first rank all through, and lands up in America, huge success corporate-wise, and all that, and then suddenly this rupture that happens. And the other thing Mr. Hiremath mentioned is very interesting is, I think Mr. Anand Kumar, is that these people were not interested in political power. Their idea of, the Indian dream was not to come here and rule or take control of something. So there was a dream of reconstructing India, or looking at rebuilding this country through a very different kind of channel and agency, which is why this book is also a micro history of small social history of a lot of organizations like Freya, which became ICA in America, and then Mr. P.K. Mehta's efforts. People like Amulya Reddy sitting in the Indian Institute of Science trying to do small things with, for rural empowerment. Those were kind of dreams which were outside of the usual framework that one thought of a dream. So that fascinated me, and that theoretically held me together. You started looking at it, and it started opening up, and you found everything fascinating. And I should also say something, because T.N. Kaul was mentioned, I should say that Mr. Nandy spoke about Tiki Kaul. See, he was such a fascinating character. He would go to, this is because it has to do a lot with my archival work. If he had not left back his papers, probably this book wouldn't have been so rich. And he left behind papers because he used to go to an American university or any public forum, and he would say, he would publicly announce, I am switching on my tape recorder because I don't want to be misquoted. And he would record everything, and then get some first secretary or some assistant of his to sort of, do a transcript of it, make a correction of that transcript, make a final draft of it, and keep it on record. And all of that is available. So you now know the kind of propaganda model that he employed to try and give Mrs. Gandhi a very positive picture in America. Because the first ever interview that Mrs. Gandhi gives to a foreign press is to the Saturday Review in August of 1975, and then she speaks to the NBC and others. But that interview itself, the coaching that he gives Mrs. Gandhi, the kind of answers that he tries to develop for her, and the kind of arguments, one would be ashamed to build an argument like that in defense of the emergency. He does all of that. And he's such a vulnerable character at the same time. There is a human side to him. So, and Mr. Hiremath is here. And so Hiremath is going around distributing pamphlets of MC Chagla's speech that has been made at the Palmer House in Chicago, where the ambassador is supposed to come. So he's campaigning there, saying that this is wrong, and they're all there. And, he's also the chairman and president of the ILA, the India League of America. So he's taken inside to meet the ambassador. So he introduces himself as S.R. Hiremath. And Tiki Kaul, he says, "You're that same Hiremath?" But doesn't get furious. He also laughs it off. There's something about that man which fascinated me as a character. And then he writes his memoirs after the emergency is over, and says that this was a great group. They did all great things. But his secret notes to Mrs. Gandhi that he was sending, the embassy notes, which I quote, is all very different. And then he says, I advised her to sort of get out of this thing. But it is completely opposite in his papers. So, it's fascinating to discover these things and contrast and contradict and try to pull them off their pedestals. So that's what I did. We'll probably, it's getting too late. Probably we'll end with what Mr. Ravi has to ask. Yeah.
Take the mic up.
First of all, let me disabuse everybody. A term has been used to describe us. I would not use that term. You've called us heroes. Several people have said we are very ordinary people. We were very ordinary people, and we remain very ordinary people. What we did was that we were brought up in the 50s and the 60s. And many of you would remember the 1950s. It was a time of great hope and excitement and nation building, right? And that was the dream that we carried in our heads. What Nehruji would say, कि ये जादू तो नहीं है, 5 साल में परिवर्तन नहीं होगा, लेकिन 15 साल के बाद, 3rd 5-year plan के बाद, देश में हरियाली होगी और लोगों के चेहरे पे खुशहाली होगी. So we had that dream, and that's what we carried with us. I'm often asked, what brought you back? Answer is very simple. I had made a promise to Dunu कि यार तुम संभाल लो इसको, फ्रिया को, ये हमारा ये सपना है, आप इसको पूरा कर दीजिए, और जब तुम्हें मेरी ज़रूरत होगी तो 1 साल का नोटिस दे देना. 1 year notice, I extended it like I extend everything else. Now, Sugata said to me a couple of days ago, I'm very nervous. I said, what are you nervous about? तुम मुझे क्या सवाल पूछोगे? So, it's not very difficult. I'll let you off the hook because you've written a great book. It's full of material that is so hard to find. And I'm amazed at once he finds something interesting, he really goes after it, devotes a chapter to it. So you get the full flavor of that idea. For you, there are 2 questions. Okay. एक तो ये है, how did you find out about Bayard Rustin? Bayard Rustin is an amazing guy. I, of course, had the privilege of meeting him a couple of times. And wonderful person, very warm-hearted, lean, but full of energy and lots of stories to tell. So, one question is, how did you find Bayard Rustin? And the second one is that after that story appeared about Indians for Democracy on the front page of the New York Times, I think sometime in January 76?
March of
76.
Feb of 76.
So, after it appeared, through our own network, we heard that Mr. Kaul had been called back to India. And Sanjay Gandhi was furious with him. हमने तुम्हें भेजा किस लिए था? We thought we were sending the best person and you weren't able to do anything. तो ये सब जो डांट फटकार उसको पड़ी, उसके बारे में भी उसने कुछ अपने आर्काइव्स में लिखा कि नहीं? So those are my questions.
Yeah, the first thing about Bayard Rustin, I discovered his role in resisting the emergency and being part of the IFT in a small note that Mr. Ravi has forgotten that he had written, where they had gathered a lot of these War Resistor League people and a lot of trainers, Quaker trainers and others, to guide Indians. This was in January of 1976. See, emergency was not taken seriously in America until Mrs. Gandhi postponed the elections. They were just saying, it's okay, it's all right, some certain things have to be done. And Tiki Kaul was going around telling that, see, the Bill of Rights had also been suspended. So what's great? It's part of the Constitution. We can do this. So that was the argument that he was giving. But then, once the election was postponed, and Mr. Ravi Chopra had a contact. He is not, in the New York Times, higher up, at the trustee level or the owner level, whom he was feeding information for 6 long months. And that man, they were feeling a little frustrated, I think, because nothing was appearing in the New York Times. But once they sort of realized that the elections had been postponed and this was going to be a serious affair, they wrote this huge piece. And on the same day, T.K. Kaul was doing a clandestine meeting with some diaspora people in New York. And this paper has put out the story in the morning, and he's furious. And in that meeting, there is minutes of that meeting. He was such a meticulous guy. Bureaucrat. He kept a bureaucrat. And he's the only person he goes on abusing in that meeting is Mr. Anand Kumar. Who the hell does he think? That kind of language. And then he says that this bloody New York Times, I keep writing letters to them. I keep sending articles. They don't publish. And I'm a friend of so-and-so and all that. But they publish about this ragtag, army of these bunch of jokers who are washing dirty linen in public. He gets furious. So that minutes is also available, which I quote from. So this is, Bayard Rustin, to come back to Bayard Rustin, so he was part of the training team that these people, they went about in a very organized fashion. They also, they moved out of this India. What was happening in India during the emergency was everybody was talking about, how to bring this government down, or how to, the underground activity and the conspiracies. C.G.K. Reddy was traveling across the globe trying to find a transponder to build a radio station in India. Can you imagine? So that kind, but these people, for the very first time, very slowly move towards human rights. I think that paradigm gets created by them. And it's also interesting that Jimmy Carter is running an election and he's also speaking the same language at that time. So their representations that they make to international organizations on human rights violation, I think that sets the tone. And they move from this whole thing of abusing Mrs. Gandhi. They don't abuse Mrs. Gandhi anywhere. That's the beauty of the whole resistance. They accommodate everybody's perspective, but they say we are about this is a Gandhian resistance, because there's a pressure from the right and extraordinary pressure from the left. What was, America was full of all these, people who wanted to be Naxals but were in Canadian universities. And I write about one such character, Hari Sharma, Ipana, but they were getting beaten up by the Canadian Communist Party because they thought, and the Ghadar Party people, they thought that these people were trying to take away their agenda. So these people were in the middle and were being pressured by the right, which was not so dominant. The American VHP had just then started. Mahesh Mehta was attending their meetings, but they did not have power to pressurize them. But the left was trying to appropriate the students in campuses, and they were, that kind of pressure was there. And the left, the extreme left, was seeing an opportunity to build a revolution in India, not the Sampurna Kranti kind of thing, but the real, revolution in India, instead of bringing back democracy. So that was their line. So I quote from the CPI ML papers at that time, all of that. So it's very, very, very interesting kind of ideological battle that was happening. And these people are in the middle. And Ravi Chopra is editing Indian Opinion. And Subramanian Swamy is bringing out Satyavani. And at some point, he wants to take over Indian Opinion. So there is a meeting where Ravi threatens to walk out if Indian Opinion is appropriated. So all these happen. I leave you to read all that in the book. But Bayard Rustin was discovered in their own note. He had been invited to train some of them at the end of January. And then I got interested in this name. I didn't know who he was. I started digging. And then I discovered a great letter that he wrote, which was published in not Indian Opinion, but Swaraj. In Swaraj, he writes a devastating letter to Indira Gandhi and says why democracy should be restored in India. And this man is a neglected man, and I have a kind of soft thing for all these characters, Deve Gowda, Bayard Rustin, Rahul Gandhi. So I just cry about all of them. So I just got very interested and then went on read. There's a brilliant biography of Bayard Rustin which came out in 2008, John DeMillo. Was biography. It's fascinating biography. And then this movie was made when I was writing about him. I was happy I knew a lot about him by the time the movie had come. So that's about Bayard Rustin. And then the other question was this last question.
No, that was about whether T.N. Call had written about the firing he got.
No, I don't think there was any. There is no. I have not. See, I don't write about international pressure or anything with certainty because I go by what I find in the archives. If I cannot find evidence or substantiate what I am stating, I just don't go and make a statement there. So I have not said that Tiki Kaul was recalled because he failed in America. But Tiki Kaul says in 2 or 3 letters to friends and also Keval Singh who replaced him that, I had asked Mrs. Gandhi to relieve me in 73, but she had pleaded with me that, she can't do without me. He's that kind of a character who exaggerates everything. So I don't really know, sir, but whether he was kicked out, but then that one could sort of make that kind of evidence.
One brief comment.
Yeah, I think we'll end because they're getting a little... Yeah, you want... quickly. Yeah.
No, quickly, see that experience during emergency, during the formative years, inspired me to take up the most murderous mining mafia in Karnataka. Because the key to taking it up was taking it to the Supreme Court with Prashant Bhushan here, Justice Santosh Hegde, Lokayukta there. So building a team of people you can take very powerful and impossible situations is what taught us. Thank you. Sorry for the taking time.
You asked for the poster? That's the poster. Walk for Human Rights.
You should show the reverse of it because all the details are on the reverse of that poster.
And the person who has sketched this is was a young man then, Surya Narayan Hegde, the nephew of Ramakrishna Hegde.
Oh, I didn't know this. So this is again. So this is all.
So these are excerpts from, I think, various of the Indian Opinion.
Indian Opinion.
Yeah.
And other quotes and other
Right.
stuff. Yes.
And this was the poster that
Let
Sugata
them
was
learn.
talking about, the 15th August, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, 15th August 75. We were trying to rally Indian citizens abroad.
Can I ask Mr. Anand Kumar to give this to the publisher, Millie Ashwarya? She has put in a lot of effort. Millie, why don't you come? These are the posters, probably you'll frame it. This is Millie, a round of applause for Millie.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's a marvelous work. Marvelous work.
It's always happening.
I would also like to acknowledge Rahul Ramgundam. I saw him somewhere around, and Ms. Sugata Prasad, fascinating biographer of JP with Vimal Prasad. So when she's here and she read my book and she wrote for the book on the cover, so I'm very, very grateful. And of course Rahul Ramgundam, a fascinating biographer of
George
Fernandez. I don't know if he's around. I just saw him somewhere.
Okay. On behalf of the India International Center, it's my privilege to extend our deepest thanks for this evening of rich reflection on the Conscience Network by Sugata Srinivasaraju, a powerful work that restores to our national memory a vital transnational story of resistance rooted in moral clarity and Gandhian ideals. Our sincere gratitude to the author whose research and narrative insight have given voice to a remarkable network of conscience that stood firm in the face of authoritarian authoritarianism. We are deeply thankful to our distinguished panel, to Shri Suhas Borker for his thoughtful moderation and lifelong commitment to democratic media and civic engagement, to our Dr. Ashis Nandy for his profound intellectual interventions that continue to illuminate the moral dimensions of politics and dissent, to Ms. Neerja Chowdhury for her unwavering commitment to political journalism and for bringing decades of democratic transitions into public view, and to Shri Dunu for his pioneering work in people-centric development and for embodying the enduring spirit of resistance on the ground. A special word of thanks to Dr. Ravi Chopra, Shri S.R. Hiremath, and Professor Anand Kumar, whose lived experiences and reflections lend the evening rare immediacy and depth, and affirmed that the ideals in the Conscience Network are very much alive in our present. To our audience, thank you for your presence and engagement, and to the IIC team for enabling this meaningful evening with quite efficiency and care. This evening reminds us that history must not only be remembered, it must be upheld. Thank you very much.